Hello, my dear friends. This week, my drasha is about these two bottles. Now, Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage. I would paraphrase that and say, all of life is a classroom, because everything that happens in life has potential lessons for us. Moral lessons, religious lessons, inspirational lessons. Baal Shem Tov says that if we meet somebody, a random person on the street, it's not an accident. There's a reason. God orchestrates everything. And there's something that I could learn from everyone, whether it's maybe positive qualities that the person can teach me or negative things that I shouldn't be doing. There's always something to be learned from life's experiences, even from 2 bottles of Diet Coke. Now, when I drive, sometimes I'm a little bit tired. I need a caffeine pickup, so I buy or I take along a bottle of Diet Coke. I am a Diet Coke fan. Probably many of you know from Shalom Zachars, I only drink Diet Coke. I do not like Diet Pepsi. It has a completely different taste. I just don't go for it. Coke, after all, as the advertisement says, is the real thing. And that's it. For me, it's gotta be Diet Coke. Once in a while, there's no Diet Coke available, and I have to buy a Diet Pepsi, and I struggle to be able to get through the bottle. Well, this week, I was driving along on the highway, and I needed a Diet Coke. So I went into a convenience, in the rest area, went into the convenience store, and I bought myself this bottle of Diet Coke. You could tell it's Diet Coke because it has, the label is the same dark gray color as always is displayed in Diet Coke. Well, I drank the soda, and I tell you, it was just delicious. It was just like I like it. When I finished drinking the soda, I was suddenly astounded to see that this label, maybe it's gray, but it's not Diet Coke, it's Diet Pepsi. This is the real thing. This is Diet Coke, but this is Diet Pepsi. And I couldn't understand. How come? I didn't know. How is it possible that I was drinking this bottle of Diet Pepsi and I thought it was Diet Coke? What I realized is that really Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi taste almost the same. And if you put on a blindfold, you would have a hard time saying which one is which. So why am I so prejudiced against Diet Pepsi? Because there's a bug in my head. There was a bias. Maybe years ago, for some reason, I decided I bought some Diet Coke. I decided I liked the way it tastes. And then I somehow or another I decided the taste of Diet Pepsi is different, and since then I have a bias. And I could tell you, I don't want to say I could swear because you're not supposed to swear, but I'm absolutely certain that there's a difference in the taste between Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi. But the reality is that they both taste almost the same. And because I didn't realize that I was drinking Diet Pepsi, I thought I was drinking Diet Coke. So what's the lesson here? What's what Chazal call the Musar Haskel? The lesson is that in life, we make decisions all the time. But if the decisions are based on preconceived notions that we have, or we're biased, then it's very hard to make objective decisions. The Chumash says in the beginning of this week's Parashas, Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha b'chol sha'arecha. You should put judges and officers to enforce the law, like constables, policemen, in all of your gates. You should put Shoftim v'shotrim. The Shalach HaKodesh says that Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha b'chol sha'arecha homiletically means that we all are shoftim and shoftim. We are all judges and constables because we all make decisions. Every single moment of life, we're making decisions. And we need to have shoftim and shotrim b'chol sharecha. Sha'arim, the Shilah says that there are 7 gateways on the face. There's the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the mouth and the 2 nostrils. And he says that we are in charge of those, just like a shoter, a policeman is in charge of the gates. We are in charge of our own selves, and we constantly have to make decisions, and we have to make judicious decisions and right decisions, because we have to decide which things is appropriate for our eyes to see. What things should we listen to? We're not supposed to listen to Lashon Hara. Chazal say that that's why we have earlobes, so we can plug up our ear if somebody's telling us Lashon Hara. We have to be careful not only what goes in our ears, but what comes out of our mouth. What things do we say? Are we truthful? Do we speak Lashon Hara? Do we say positive things? And the nostrils represents anger, because when a person, the Chumash says, charonaf, the anger of the nose, because when a person is angry, it's like the smoke comes out of the nose. The person fumes from their nose. So Shoftim b'Shoftim, the pasuk says, Titein l'cha. Why l'cha? You should point for you. What do you mean for you? Because every person has to be a shofet and a shoter on his own sha'arim, on his own entrance ways, and exit ways, on his face. And the point here is that every single person is a shofet, because we're always making decisions. We always have to make evaluations and make decisions about what's the right thing to do and not the wrong thing to do. A few psukim later, the Torah says, "Lo sikach shocha." Don't take bribes. I have a question. Why does it say lo sikach? Sikach is second person. Third person would be lo yikach. We're talking about judges. You should appoint judges. It should have said lo yikach shocha. The judge should not take a bribe. Why lo sika? Lo sika means you should not. The answer is, again, because every single one of us is a shofet, and we have to be super careful not to take bribes. And Chazal say that a bribe, shocha, doesn't only mean where somebody tries to buy influence by giving us money and says, if you rule in my favor, I'll give you $1,000. That's, of course, that's the worst form of shochet. But Chazal says shochet is even if somebody gives me a gift, even if he says, I want you to rule correctly, that's also shochet, because shochet is a bias. If somebody is nice to me, then that establishes a bias. I'm more likely to rule in that person's favor than the other person. How much is shochet? So the Gemara says in Ksubas, amazing Gemara. The Gemara says that Amemar had a feather that fell on his head, and a person came by and he removed the feather. And Amemar was a judge, and he said later, a person came before Amemar and he asked him to adjudicate his case. He said, I can't, because you gave me shochad by removing the feather. The Shmuel was crossing a rope bridge, and somebody on the other end gave him a hand so he should get across easily. And subsequently, the person came to Shmuel for the Torah. Shmuel says, I can't be a judge because I'm biased, because you did me a favor. You see how easily a person is influenced. And here we're talking about two of the greatest Amoraim, Torah scholars. But because of a feather or a hand that a person put out, they felt that they're prejudiced, they're biased. They're going to see things in favor of the person who did them that favor. So it's so easy in life to be influenced by shochad. And there's always shochad. We always have conflicts of interest and things that we want for our own benefit, our own good. And if we are to be shoftim, we can't be completely not guilty of having shochad, because there's always conflicting interests that we have and biases. But at least we should be aware that when we are influenced by external factors, that it's very difficult to be objective. And we should always ask ourselves, am I making the right decision? People justify, because that's shochad, because they want something a certain way, so they figure out a reason why it's okay. That's Shochad, which corrupts. The Chumash says, Shochad ya'aver einei chachamim. It blinds a person that they can't see the reality. Look how blinded I was by thinking that Coke tastes different than Pepsi, when in fact they're almost the same. So I was blinded. I thought they're such a major, they're like light years apart, but they're not. They're almost the same. That's because when you have a prejudice, or you have a bias, or you have a conflict of interest, it's very hard to be objective. One area in particular where this is a very important point is when it comes to our relations with other people and judging other people. We don't realize it, but we tend to judge people not only on the basis of what they do, but we judge them on the basis of how we feel about them. Two people could do the identical thing, the exact same thing, and one person, we think nothing of it, big deal. And the other person, you make a whole thing out of it, and look at this person. You could see, for example, let's say somebody is trying to get ahead on a line. So one person, you'll see that it's your good friend. look how energetic he or she is. The other person who you dislike, you say, look at that person, and miserable. Look how unethical it is that they're trying to get ahead on the line. I had an experience when I was a student in high school. I was in a class. I used to ask a lot of questions, and it irritated one of my teachers. The teacher did not like me. So one day I raised my hand and I asked the question, which I thought was an outstanding question. The teacher looked at me and said, that's ridiculous. The next day, somebody else who was in the class, who was one of the teacher's pets, who the teacher liked, the person asked the exact same question that I asked. And guess what? The teacher spent 15 minutes discussing his question. He says, wow, that's a brilliant question. And I'm sitting there, I can't understand. Yesterday, the teacher ignored me. And now it's a brilliant question. But the answer is because when you like somebody, so everything that the person says is brilliant. And when you dislike somebody, then nothing intelligent can come out of that person's minds. So this is the Diet Coke is a lesson for me. When you have something, a personal experience, it hits home. This really hit home for me, that in spite of what I thought in my mind that Diet Coke is better than Diet Pepsi, they're really the same. But when you have a bias, Diet Pepsi tastes different than Diet Coke. And that's how it is. Everything, when you have a bias, people be exact same behavior, but one person is doing great and one person, you can't stand what they're doing because of the biases that we have. And we also always have to be aware of that and ask ourselves the question, am I really being honest? Am I really being objective? Because after all, there's always shochad, there's always reasons to be biased. And ha-shochad ya'aver einei chachamim. Shochad makes a person, even if they're a chacham, it makes them completely blind.